Some would say yes, some would say no. I think I would go further than a mile radius just to see what other duplexes are selling for. I mean, I think we're seeing in Nashville right now, duplexes selling way too high. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen stuff on the Ren Facebook page and otherwise, but man, duplexes are selling way more than that, rent times 75, way lower than that 2% rule. I don't know how people are making that work because, again, a duplex is going to be more work than a single family. Your tenants, when they share a wall, you're going to have acrimony. You're going to have people call and say, this guy. And again, back to exit strategy, duplexes can be difficult because who usually buys duplexes? Owner-occupants or investors? Do investors want to just give you way more money than it's worth, or they want a deal?
They want a deal.
So just think about whatever you want to, who do you want to deal with? Do you want to sell your house to like a pretty home buyer one day and, sell and gain all that appreciation? Or, do you want to potentially, maybe you can do Airbnb. Airbnb is so cool that it makes these multifamilies worth so much more now. And maybe that's why the assets are inflating. I don't know. Could be quantitative easing. Determine rent. How do y'all determine rent? Craigslist. Good answer. Rentometer. Good answer.
Zillow Property Manager.
Good. Yes, ma'am.
A realtor, owner, occupant, renter.
That's good. So we have, how do you determine rent? We have Craigslist, my favorite. Rentometer, second favorite. We talked about Zillow, the third. And then having access to the MLS, you can look. In my opinion, a lot of the realtors don't fit. They'll put a listing up for a rental, but they won't tell you what it rented for, or they won't finish like the listing so that you kind of get to see what it rented for, or if that makes sense. I feel like what's troubling about Craigslist is if it's priced right, it's going to be gone in a few days. So if you're not looking at Craigslist all the time, you're not even going to see that listing hit. But if you see something sit for a long time, maybe that rent's too high. What we're going to talk about with those two recent sales that I put in the packet, a lot of people right now, because there's so much rapid appreciation, what they're doing is they're pushing away cash flow and some of these quick ratios, and they're going more for how can I gain so much appreciation quickly and take that equity and then go buy more properties. Because Nashville, we're in an ascending market right now. So they're riding asset appreciation. And that may or may not be something that, makes sense to you. Well, I'll say not on the MLS. So I think we all know right now the MLS it's high. So there's people in this room who are wholesalers. I'd make friends with everybody at Deals. I mean, the best opportunities will never hit the MLS. Some of the people having the most success right now are people who are both wholesalers and they're developers. They have their own mailing campaigns, so they're able to, in a way, they're vertically integrated. They buy the lot and they can develop it as they see fit. And again, what you pay for is your profit right now. So it's tough right now. No, thanks for interrupting me. No problem at all. Okay, so in real estate, wholesaling means people who they find a private seller and they connect that private seller with another buyer, and they sell the rights or they double close. And the Tennessee Real Estate Commission is really clamping down on that because they see that as practicing law without a real estate license. You need to be very careful about wholesaling. I can say though that there's tons of people in this group who've made money and still do it ethically today. Just don't take advantage of people. Be straight with them. If you're going to buy their house and resell it, tell them you're going to do that. But be fair with them. So, for example, I would write a letter to a vacant house on a street with a broken window. I'd go to the tax record or CRS. I'd find out the owner on record, and I'd write them a letter and say, "Hi, I drove by your home. Would you be interested in selling it? Here's my number. Give me a call. We have a discussion. We meet at Cracker Barrel. This turns into that." And the best people stay in touch with those people for months or years because it doesn't just happen overnight. wholesaling it's difficult, but it can be done. Versus kind of like what people say retail, that's where you buy a property, fix it up, put it on the MLS. More traditional way. Does that make sense about wholesaling? When I kind of first got into real estate investing and stuff, typically like for moderately priced homes, I'd read about, people would get a wholesale fee of $5,000. They'd say they'd buy it for $50 from the private seller, they'd sell it for $55. There's plenty of meat on the bone for the rehabber, the person who's going to renovate it, to sell, or the landlord to buy it at a great discount and then rehab it and keep it as a buy and hold, as a rental. Yeah. What's going on in Nashville now is some of these wholesalers, they're making $50 or more, depending on the deal, just because the seller doesn't know what they have. A lot of it due to zoning. There's different lots and things like that. We can get into that if y'all want to talk about that. So it just kind of depends on, the deal per se. So some wholesalers, they'll take every drop they can out of it. And that's one thing that I like about REN is, for the most part, this is a group of ethical investors. You need to be careful that you don't get taken advantage of. And there are wolves everywhere, but we don't want to buy a property and only have to sell it to somebody who's a dumber person than we are, kind of a greater fool theory. We all want to have win-win scenarios here. So that's where if you buy right, you'll always be okay. If you learn how to buy property right, you'll be fine. But yeah, they can charge whatever they want if somebody's willing to pay for it. And when you don't have an appraisal, and when you don't have a mortgage or something like that involved, you can pay whatever you want for it if it's your own cash. So, buyer beware. That's what this country's built on, right? That's how the Tennessee Real Estate Commission looks on it, and there's been some fines for people in this group. I would just say you'll be fine just kind of going under the radar, but there's people that act unethically that they get calls, their complaints. I can say for a fact that realtors don't like it, but me personally, as an investor myself, I don't have any problem with it, but I'm not the person that's the arbiter or the judge of that. In general, most realtors don't like wholesalers because, again, they're acting like brokers. So that was something that, talking about with a developer in Nashville today, is we've got a mailing campaign going out where he's going to be the person talking to the private sellers, but anything that he gets to acquire, whenever we develop the land, I'll be the listing agent on it. And I've helped him develop the spreadsheet and the zoning for the proper areas and stuff like that. So, as long as you act ethically, I think you can do whatever you want. That's a personal decision. There's a gentleman at REN, I think he's got 40 units. He does it all himself. That's his full-time job, though. So,
sounds like a full-time job.
Yeah. And then other people, I feel like for me, if I had like maybe 10, that would be enough. But again, I'm kind of greedy and I don't want to give somebody 10%. If you manage them correctly, you shouldn't have a lot of problems. I mean, when I get a call like, the toilet's messed up or the plumbing's backed up, I call the plumber. Or I call the handyman. It depends on what is needed, but I'm not the kind of person, I don't go over and work on my rental properties. Another good rule of thumb, like when you're factoring in your budget, is 10% of the gross rent for repairs and maintenance. I had, from another investor at REN, he had a spreadsheet where, he had the gross rent, and then he had, whatever debt service he had from like a mortgage or something like that, and then also coming off the gross was the repairs and maintenance, 10% for a property management company, and that shows you what your net operating income is going to be monthly and then annually. So
Vacancy? Do you factor in vacancy?
1 to 2 months, so that would be around 10%. That'd be a good one to go by. You want to be conservative with all your numbers. Again, when I mentioned earlier where I thought I was going to spend $5 in rehab, I spent $13.5. And then, right after the tenants moved in, the brown recluses came back, so we had, another $500 on top of that. So it's just kind of like, you've got to have reserves. I think anybody who's done this long enough will tell you is you must have reserves. Don't do a deal if it's going to take all the cash you have. Cash is your most valuable asset because it keeps you liquid. It gives you options. Mark Cuban, the investor, he likes to keep a lot of cash on hand so he can jump on any kind of big deal. And I think that's kind of how I feel. I'm kind of stockpiling cash right now. I'm trying to wait. Maybe the market's going to take a dip. I don't know. We'll see. So in your packet on recommended reading, I have Robin Thompson. She's the queen of rehab. She speaks at REN almost every year. This is her formula. Mayo, maximum allowable offer equals the after repaired value. That's what the house is going to be worth after you build it or fix it. Maximum allowable offer equals the ARV times 0.7 or whatever you want to use. If you're a wholesaler, you use 0.6 or lower. You want to get these properties as low as possible. By changing that decimal, it's going to change the number significantly. So that's like 70% of the after repaired value minus repairs. So let's say the after repaired value is $100,000, just nice even number. The most you can offer is 100,000 times 0.7, that's 70,000 minus the repairs. So what are the repairs? Let's say it needs 20,000. So the most you could offer would be 50. If you want to sell it for 100, the most you can offer is 50. If it needs 20 in repairs, that gives you plenty of wiggle room right there. That's 30% gross. So the gentleman was talking about he's doing his first deal or second or whatever, and he's got help from Ren. So go to the general meeting, and then for sure come to the deals meeting. It's the first and third Tuesday night. That's, in my opinion, the most important one, and it's in this room. The deals meeting is. The general meeting is at the 50 Forward Center on Rains Avenue by the fairgrounds. I like that one too, just to meet people and network, but this one, the deals is a great one. And don't forget the Rutherford County one, you know. It's worth your time. I mean, if you want to, I like to go to deals. It pushes me for how to think about how to buy and sell property. I'm kind of an old-fashioned kind of person. I kind of want to be debt-free one day. Deals is about for people who want to never pay off debt, who want to, you know, build skyscrapers. Yeah, absolutely. So it's just kind of, if that's your risk tolerance, then go for it.
Thank
Yes, ma'am. So the young lady mentioned that I didn't hit number 3. So number 4, this is one I look at a lot. So when you're first buying a property, let's say you're getting a bank loan, you're putting 20% down. You know, that just shows that that's how much cash you got in the deal. Whatever your payment is, whatever you got in the deal, in the cash you get back. So let's say, for example, let's say that I put on a down payment on a house, 10% down. It's a $100,000 house. So let's say I've got $10,000 in the property. And let's say that I'm getting $500 a month net, not gross, but net. So that's $6,000 a year. Somebody can do the calculator for me. The net income divided by how much you've got in the property is going to give you your cash-on-cash return. Now, 6 divided by 10. That's 60? So that's an incredible return. 60% return on your cash. Let's say that you've got, 20. Down payment money, repair money. What's 6,000 divided by 20,000? 30% return. That's still a great return. So in 3 years and a little bit more, you're going to get all your capital back out of that property. You'll have no money in it. It's an infinite return. Does that make sense?
So it's net income divided by amount invested.
Yeah, in a particular property. That's where leverage helps you. What if you bought that $100,000 house without leverage? I can do that one. That's a 6% return. Instead of putting 20% down, you just paid for all of it. You just created a 6% return. That's not necessarily a great use of your capital, right? That's not a good enough return. This is like if you got $500 a month net times 12, $6,000 a year. Like what you've got in a property, like all the cash you've got in it.
Okay.
Me personally, up until this year, going full-time in real estate, I never made more than $30,000 a year. So I wanted to make 25% return on my money. I mentioned in the handout, when you're new, you've got to do great deals. I mean, you've got to really get the snowball going, get the flywheel turning, or you're never going to be able to reach escape velocity and take off. Now, if I had millions of dollars, I could do a 6% return all day long. I think it just depends on what you want to do. I mean, your Airbnb stuff, I'm sure you're getting a great return on that. Historically, you can get a 10% return from the stock market, and it's totally passive. Now, you may have your money in some way where you can't access it until you're 65 or something like that, so that's different. But, I want as much income passively as I can get today, right now. So like with that opportunity, I can go and do more deals. Or, I can buy whatever I need to buy. Cash on cash return is just another ratio for you to look at what's the best use of my money. I mean, like the Rich Dad Poor Dad, he talked about where he'd do $100 cash flow a door. And at first I thought, okay, because he says, if I could get infinite number of them, that's great. But when I started thinking about all the headaches that go with, tenants and repairs and stuff like that, let's say you only make $100 a month. That's $1,200 a year. What happens if you need to fix something? I mean, one repair.
One appliance and you're done.
Yeah, one appliance, one repair. So, yeah, exactly. HVAC, you're negative. And people do it all the time. I mean, they buy. If you buy a rental property on that 1% rule, where, let's say some people say, for a $100,000 home, I need to get $1,000 rent. That's where you're going to have a really low return, and you're not going to cash flow much. And what I see with that is that's when you see that stereotypical landlord that's cheap, doesn't have money, doesn't fix their properties, slum, the stereotype that we're all trying to buck because we're ethical real estate investors. So buying right is critical. What they're worth after, when I'm looking on the MLS, I look at like just about everything that's under 150 just to see what happens, And what they're selling it for is usually not the ARV. If it's like an investment grade property, it's a diamond in the rough. You've got to have that vision. You see something that no one else sees.